Picture this. It's 4 in the morning, deep inside Iran, enemy territory, one of the most hostile patches of land on the planet for an American right now. And somewhere in the darkness, a U.S. Air Force colonel, a highly decorated combat aviator, is bleeding, alone, hiding in a crack in a mountain. And thousands of Iranian soldiers, militia members, and ordinary citizens are hunting him. There is a government bounty on his head. State television is broadcasting his description to every household in the country. And the clock is ticking. This is not a movie. This happened on 4th and 5th April 2026. And what the United States military did next, over the next 48 hours, is something that military historians say has never been done before. Not like this. Not at this scale. Not in the middle of an active war. Deep inside a hostile nation that very much wanted to capture an American and parade him in front of cameras. Stay with me, because this story has it all, and it ends in a way that will genuinely give you chills. The United States military has been conducting an ongoing air campaign against Iran called Operation Epic Fury. By early April 2026, American and Allied forces had already flown over 13,000 combat sorties and struck more than 12,300 targets inside Iran. This is an active, high-intensity conflict. Iranian air defenses, sophisticated, layered, and deadly, have been systematically dismantled. The U.S. has achieved what military officials describe as air superiority over large parts of Iran. But here's the thing about air superiority that everyone needs to understand. It does not mean zero risk. It never has. It never will. Because sometimes, one guy on the ground with a shoulder-fired missile gets lucky. And on the morning of April 3rd, 2026, that is exactly what happened. The aircraft was an F-15E Strike Eagle, one of the most capable two-seat multi-role fighter jets ever built. Its call sign was Dude 44. On board, 2 crew members, a pilot and a weapons systems officer, or WSO, who was a full-bird colonel, highly experienced, highly respected. In the early morning hours of April 3rd, still the night of April 2nd back home on the East Coast, an Iranian shoulder-fired, heat-seeking missile came screaming up from the ground. Now, U.S. forces had already taken out Iran's major anti-aircraft systems in the area. But this wasn't a radar-guided system. This was a guy, on the ground, with a portable missile on his shoulder. And according to President Trump at a White House briefing on April 6th, that missile got sucked right into the engine of the F-15. At 4:40 a.m. local time in Iran, the U.S. military's Joint Personnel Recovery Center made it official. 2 American crew members were down in hostile territory. They had ejected safely. Their rescue beacons were active, but they had landed far apart from each other, in enemy territory, surrounded. What happened next is the part that makes your jaw drop. Within hours of that crash, the U.S. military sent 21 aircrafts screaming into hostile Iranian airspace. Not at night, not under cover of darkness, in broad daylight, for 7 straight hours. Think about the sheer boldness of that decision for a moment. The rescue force included 10 warthogs running what's called a Sandy mission, which means they get low, get close, and lay down crushing suppressive fire to keep enemy forces away from a downed pilot. It included HC-130 Combat King II aircraft, massive specialized tankers that were refueling the HH-60W Jolly Green II rescue helicopters while they were still flying, pushing them deep enough into Iranian territory to actually reach the pilot. And it included special warfare airmen, combat rescue officers, and pararescuemen, whose entire existence is built around one mission: go get your guy, no matter what. Trump himself said many of these aircraft flew so low that they were being shot at by rifles. Not missiles, rifles. That's how close they were to the ground. The first crew member, the pilot, call sign Dude 44 Alpha, was pulled out of Iran aboard a Jolly Green 2 helicopter under close-range gunfire. The moment that helicopter lifted off, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane said later, "Every single person in Iran who had a small arms weapon was shooting at it." Another rescue helicopter behind them took multiple hits. One crew member on that trailing helicopter was lightly injured, but Dude 44 Alpha was safe. Then things got much more complicated. Dude 44 Bravo. The colonel, the WSO, had landed at a significant distance from his pilot, and he had not landed well. He was badly injured, bleeding and alone, and the area around him was, in Trump's words, teeming with Iranian personnel, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Basij militia, local police, and ordinary citizens, all mobilized to find him. Iranian state television had gone on air and was urging civilians across the region, anyone watching, to help capture the, quote, enemy pilot. They were offering a reward, a government bounty. In a country of 90 million people, that is not something you want to hear when you're bleeding in the mountains with no backup. But here is where the story shifts. Because Dude 44 Bravo did something extraordinary. He remembered his training. Despite his injuries, he started moving. Away from his ejection point, he began climbing. Not down toward roads, toward people, toward things that might get him found. He climbed up, into treacherous mountain terrain, scaling cliff faces, dragging himself higher and higher to put distance between himself and the searchers below. He was creating his own little fortress of isolation at altitude. Meanwhile, both the U.S. military and Iran's government were in a desperate race. Neither side actually knew exactly where he was. And that is when the CIA entered the picture.
What the CIA pulled off next is the kind of thing you expect to see in a spy thriller. Not real life, but it was very, very real. The agency began spreading word inside Iran, through human assets and sophisticated intelligence tools, that the U.S. had already found the WSO and was moving him out of the country by ground. They planted false intelligence. They sent American aircraft flying over 9 different locations, including one site 25 miles away from where the colonel was actually hiding, to make Iranian forces think he was somewhere else. At one point, according to the briefing, Iran had 7 different locations where they believed he might be. They were running around in circles, chasing ghosts. And then the CIA did something almost cinematic. They pointed a surveillance camera from 40 miles away at the WSO's suspected mountain hideout. They watched, and they waited. For about 45 minutes, nothing moved. Thick bushes, darkness, silence. It was unclear if he was even there. And then he stood up. That was all they needed. CIA Director John Ratcliffe passed the coordinates to the Pentagon. Trump immediately ordered the second rescue mission.
The second rescue wave was unlike anything the modern military has ever assembled for a single downed aviator. 155 aircraft. That's not a typo. It included 4 bombers, 64 fighters, 48 aerial refueling tankers, 13 dedicated rescue aircraft, and more, all converging on a remote Iranian mountain in the dead of night. They flew for another 7 hours in darkness. 2 MC-130J Special Operations aircrafts with specialized equipment flew into the mountains first. That included 3 MH-6 Little Bird helicopters, small, incredibly agile machines, which were rapidly assembled on location to make the climb to the colonel's hiding spot. Iranian forces were still out there, still fighting. A-10s ran Sandy protection missions through the entire night, keeping enemy forces off the mountainside with devastating precision fire. The MC-130s that delivered all this equipment got bogged down in wet, sandy soil. They couldn't fly out. So the U.S. military intentionally blew them up on the spot, along with the Little Bird helicopters, destroying their own aircrafts rather than let Iran get anywhere near American technology. And Dude 44 Bravo was pulled off that mountain, alive. Trump's summary at the April 6th White House briefing, delivered alongside Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, General Dan Kane, and CIA Director Ratcliffe, was blunt. This was, in his own words, one of the largest, most complex, most harrowing combat search and rescue missions ever attempted by the military. And for once, that kind of statement is very hard to argue with. 0 Americans killed, 0 captured. This story isn't just about 2 airmen and a daring rescue. There's something in it that actually matters to you, personally. When the U.S. military says, "We will never leave an American warfighter behind," that is not a slogan. That is not a press release. What just happened in Iran is the proof of concept. Think about what the United States was willing to risk to bring back 2 people. Not an army, not a strategic asset. 2 people. They sent 21 aircraft in daylight. They sent 155 aircraft at night. They blew up their own planes on foreign soil rather than compromise their technology. The CIA ran a sophisticated disinformation campaign inside a hostile nation in real time. They put hundreds of additional lives on the line to retrieve 2. What does that say to every American who has a son or daughter in uniform right now? What does it say to the 18-year-old kid sitting in a recruiting office somewhere, wondering, if things go wrong out there, will anyone come for me? This operation is the answer. When adversaries see that you're willing to commit this kind of resource, this kind of manpower, technology, and sheer will to recover 2 soldiers, they understand something about the depth of your commitment. And that deterrence, that signal, it makes you safer too, even if you're nowhere near a battlefield. Finally, and this is the part I don't think gets enough attention, think about the human being in that mountain crevice. A colonel, bleeding, alone, being hunted by thousands of people for 48 hours. And he did not give up. He climbed, he hid, he treated his own wounds. He stayed still for 45 minutes while a camera from 40 miles away stared at his hiding spot. He trusted that someone would come. That is not just military training. That is a level of mental fortitude that most of us in our most honest moments would wonder if we possess. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, said it best at that April 6th briefing. He said that the single most important factor in a successful rescue operation is the spirit of attack inside the heart of the downed aviator, their will to survive, their will to evade, their will to be recovered. Dude 44 Bravo had that will. And because he did, and because hundreds of Americans risked everything to honor a promise, he's home. This was not a perfect mission. Aircraft were lost. Equipment was destroyed. Helicopters came home with bullet holes. And the broader conflict with Iran is far from over. But in the middle of all of it, the United States military looked at one of the most hostile environments on Earth, looked at a single injured man hiding on a mountain and said, "We're coming for you anyway." That's the story of Dude 44. And in my opinion, it's one of the most remarkable stories to come out of any conflict in modern American military history. If you found this worth your time, share it. because not enough people are talking about this with the depth it deserves. I'll see you in the next one.